welcome to each of you. We do apologize for those of you who experienced some issues trying to connect, but we're so glad to have everyone here today. Today we wrap up our summer speaker series at Alexander and Haberman and are hosting Mike Becker to present long-term care planning, the fifth and last installment of our 2022 workshop series, which also included Social Security planning, taxes and retirement, Roth conversions, and the power of zero, a tax planning strategy. As we get started, I want to say it's great to be with so many of you again. A special thanks to all our staff who make this possible, including Aaron and Todd, who are at the back today, as well as Joshua and Caleb, who did a lot of work setting up the series, and also Christian, Zena, Jackie, Nicole, and Beth. And we want to extend a special welcome to those of you who are seeing us for the first time, and give a big thank you to those who invited you. Additionally, I want to say where this came from. After working with clients to take care of their health insurance, Medicare, and group insurance needs, we found that more and more of our clients were asking about things that were impacting their decisions. Things like Social Security, when to retire, if they could retire, how to pay for things like long-term care or leave a legacy. While I dabbled in advising, I no longer practice in many of those areas, and so it's wonderful to have partnered with so many financial advisors, and we look to those advisors to help us present information on these topics. Today's presentation, Long-Term Care Planning, is presented by Mike Becker with Legacy Financial Partners. Mike Becker has been in the financial services industry for over 27 years. He started in the financial service industry right off the college campus. After 6 years of running his own financial planning business, he transitioned into sales management. For 18 years, Mike was a frontline manager focused on teaching financial planning to financial professionals. In 2021, Mike decided to start a family financial planning business called Legacy Financial Partners. Legacy Financial Partners works with Securities America, Futurity First Insurance Group, and Senior Market Sales, providing his clients financial solutions. Mike specializes in building and implementing financial plans for busy families and helping retirees with their retirement income plans. Mike speaks on several different financial topics, including Social Security, taxes and retirement, and long-term care. When Mike is not working, he enjoys golf, Wisconsin Badger football, and chasing his 3 kids, all under age 11, around the house, the golf course, and the ball fields. Mike has been married to his wonderful wife, Anna, for 15 years. As always, Alexander and Haberman does not practice in the specialties of its speakers, but welcomes them here to speak for the educational benefit of our clients, friends, and guests. Alexander and Haberman is a specialty firm focused on assisting with Medicare Advantage, supplements, and Part D plans, as well as individual and family health insurance, on and off exchange, and group benefits, including health, dental, vision, and disability. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen and send them to the host and panelists. We will respond to them at the end of the presentation. This will allow anyone who needs to leave promptly to hear the entire presentation. So, to get us started with today's presentation, it is my honor to introduce Mike Becker.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany, for that warm introduction as always. Great to be back with the clients and friends of Alexander and Haberman. And it's hard to believe that this is our 5th of our summer series. I'm going to have a tear in my eye at the end as this is closing it up for 2022. But it's been a lot of fun talking about these different topics. And hopefully you've had a chance to take the opportunity to watch each of the workshops, but actually to implement some of the strategies as well to put yourself in a better financial position. And we always start with some disclosures, letting you know that I'm not part of any governmental agency. I'm not a CPA providing tax advice. I'm a local financial advisor that gets to see what keeps people up at night, and what some of the problems are, and some strategies and tactics for dealing with those problems. And other than running out of money in retirement, probably long-term care is number 2 on the list that creates the most anxiety for people. And as Brittany said, we're going to roll through this content today. As questions arise, feel free to chat, and we promise we'll get to those questions at the very end during our Q&A session. So this is what we've got on the docket for today. It's hard to dress this topic up. This isn't a lot of fun, but this is really important. And that's why you've all chosen to take time out of your days, probably to learn about not only long-term care issues, but strategies for addressing the potential problem. We're going to start that conversation talking about some of the problems or the risk, but we will spend some time at the end talking about solutions. And what problem are we talking about? We're talking about chronic care, chronic disability. And this can happen to us at any time. It could be an accident that hits us at any point in life. It could be heart attack, stroke, or cancer. It could be aging or the frail stage of life. And with amazing medical technology today, we're living longer, and there's a better chance of us needing some of the chronic care or having a chronic disability. And we've often heard of activities of daily living, or ADLs. This is really important for long-term care planning because this is the trigger for benefits for most long-term care policies. So normally it is substantial assistance with 2 of 6 activities of daily living. Activities of daily living: washing, dressing, feeding, toileting, mobility, and transferring. Substantial assistance. So this is really important in understanding, will my long-term care policy pay? And as we said earlier, people want to talk about this, but people are not talking about long-term care. And you can see highlighted 45% of people have not had a long-term care conversation. I'm going to cite a nationwide long-term care study a few times throughout today's presentation. That study says that 29% of people, less than 1 in 3, have talked to their spouse about their wishes for long-term care, and 21%, less than 1 in 5, or about 1 in 5, have talked to their kids. We're not doing a great job of talking to our loved ones about our wishes. The other thing that I think is important, how are your peers thinking about paying for long-term care? 43% of your peers are planning on having Medicaid pay. Now, what is Medicaid? Medicaid's our country's support network when you are broke, right? When you've run out of all your money, the social safety net that we have in this country is called Medicaid. It's 43% are planning on using that social safety net. 39% are planning on using their savings, and about 30% are actually using long-term care, some kind of long-term care insurance. So that's what our peers are thinking. I think the other thing that's fascinating is very few people are talking to financial professionals about this issue. Less than 1 in 10. Who are they talking to? Who are we talking to, right? Cousin, uncle, other people that may not be the appropriate people to talk about the problem and the potential solutions. But I'm encouraged with the second number. 36% of people are planning on having a conversation with a financial professional. Now, it doesn't say if that's in their lifetime or in 2022, 2023. Hopefully it's in the near term. But hopefully one of our takeaways from today's conversation is to encourage you to go out and talk to somebody who's got some background and expertise in long-term care, whether it's us or somebody else, to talk about the potential problem and potential solutions. So we're not talking to our loved ones about this. We're not talking to financial professionals. Again, who are we talking to about this? And there's a lot of reasons why we're not having this conversation. We're not doing anything about this conversation. Their excuses, their rationales, their objections, whatever we want to call them, these are the 6 that I hear the most. Number 1 is hopefully why we're here. It's confusing. And I think long-term care is one of the hardest risks to plan for because some people don't need any care, some need a couple months, and some people need a decade or more of care. So how do you really understand what that problem is? How do you understand how to price that risk? It's really, really challenging. Therefore, it's very confusing in how to go about it. And often we get paralyzed with that confusion. Number 2, I cringe, I cry, I get mad at number 2 is it's something I hear a lot, is it's not going to happen to me. And why I say I cry, I laugh, I cringe is because every day is a random outcome. How do we actually know what's going to happen? How do we know what the future is? How do we know when we're going to die, get sick? We don't know any of that. Yet some of us use statistics, as I will today, to say that's not going to happen to them. So hopefully if you're one of those people that we sort of forget about that and listen today to what is the problem that we will be discussing. Number 3 is a real problem, is not having the financial resources to be able to transfer that risk. And maybe that's why 43% of people are planning on having the social safety net of Medicaid pay for their long-term care costs. Number 4 is my family take care of me. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about this very issue. Maybe this is the case, maybe it isn't. Number 5 is the procrastination. We're humans. This is natural for us, is I'll deal with this at some point in the future. We'll spend some time discussing this. And then I'm planning on self-insuring. It's amazing how many people think they can, want to self-insure, and we'll spend a little time discussing that as well. So it's not going to happen to me, right? This is, when I think about this, I always think about this behavioral economics term called optimism bias. And what that means is that we have a tendency to overestimate the good outcomes in life and underestimate the bad outcomes in life. I'm an optimistic person. This is me to a T. Many of you out there probably are thinking the same thing. Let's be aware of that, if I can call it fault or bias, as we think about the risk of long-term care. The other thing I want you to think about today is a lot of times when we think about risks, we think of probability, chances of this thing happening. And not that that's unimportant. We'll talk about the statistics. What I want you to focus more on is the problem, because what if you're wrong with the probability? What problem are you leaving behind? And what I want you to think about today is if the decision we make today, if we choose not to transfer some of that risk, what is the potential risk or regret that we might have years down the road? And think about that, and would we make a decision differently today? Because the cost of waiting is we don't know when this is going to happen. So many of us are saying, well, I can do it when I'm older, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. Well, we don't know when that's going to happen. As we said earlier, accidents and things happen to us at younger ages as well. But number 2 is, I get this a lot, is, well, if I can wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I don't have to pay those premiums. I can save that money. Well, I'll tell you from my perspective, I bought my first long-term care policy when I was 39 years old. Is it because I wanted to pay long-term care premiums for 40 or 50 years of my life? No. I understand math. I understand how the prices go up, and I understood the decision that I was making. If you are thinking about holding off doing something because it's going to be less expenses over time, you'll actually be paying more over time. So hopefully that will help address that potential problem. But this is the bigger issue right here, is will your health change? As we said earlier, every day is a random outcome. We don't know what our health is going to look like. And I'll tell you, that is probably one of the biggest issues that I deal with, is people want to buy long-term care, but can't because of their health. And what we're dealing with here is morbidity issues, not mortality issues. So some of us think we're very healthy, and maybe we are until we're not. So again, a future regret. I'm waiting years down the road to do this. What if you get years down the road and you can't qualify? What decision would you make today? Those are things that we want to keep in the back of our mind, because again, we talk about statistics, a high likelihood that we're going to need this. 7 out of 10 people are going to be in the long-term care continuum at some point. That's a lot of folks. Some of us think that it's all nursing home based, and it's not all nursing home based. A portion of it is actually the nursing home, to the tune of about 40%. So where do people get that care? And I'm going to skip through this. Is most people, if we can go to the bottom, the custodial care. That's where a majority of the extended care services actually happens. This happens friends, neighbors, family members. You don't have to be a medical professional to provide this service. Next is intermediate care, which is a little bit more than staying in the home. And then skilled care, where you need trained professionals to take care of you. So again, sometimes we think about, well, it's all that skilled care. No, there's a lot of care that happens at the custodial and intermediate side. And this, I believe, is really important, because when we think about long-term care, most of us think about one of these 5 different places where care can happen. And what I've seen over the years is all 5 of these typically take place, or at least probably 3 or 4 of them. It's a progression that we'll talk about in a little bit. So number 1 is spouse takes care of spouse, right? That's if there is a spouse around. Why wouldn't there be a spouse around? Widow, death, divorce. My dad's situation, my mom passed away 14 years ago. Well, there's nobody there that he can rely on for a spouse to spouse. So spouses are there to help as long as they can. They physically have the ability. Kid take care of parent. Okay, that happens for a period of time. How long? We'll discuss that in a little bit. And then it's the traditional long-term care setting, the home care, the assisted living facilities, adult daycare, and the nursing home. And usually it's a progression from number 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. I refer to that as the slippery slope. Where do we all want our care to happen? Again, from the nationwide study, this is obvious. 86% of people would prefer to have their care in their home. The other statistic says 70% of those folks would be okay relying on a family member. But there's another statistic that says they're only comfortable relying on a family member if they could pay that family member. So it's really interesting of what's going through the consumer's head. And if you take nothing away from today's conversation, it's this slide right here. Get your phone out, take a picture, take out your pen. This is really basic stuff, but hopefully you walk away, again, doing something. One of those things could be develop a plan. So there's 3 key decisions that you want to go through. Number 1 is, where do you want to receive care? Geographically, type of facility. Write that down. Who's going to provide that care? Do they know? And how will you pay for that care? You want to go through each of those 3 questions to determine what a plan might be for you. And who's going to take care of you? Some of us automatically say, the kids are going to take care of me. Why? They owe me, or some other rationalization. Well, do they know this? Do they know they're going to take care of you? Because it might end up looking like this. Right? Mom and dad show up at your house saying, surprise, we're moving in. Kids are terrified, kids screaming over there. Kids are saying, oh my Lord, what's going on? Mom and dad, they're going to get worn out with those kids, especially if they come to my house. Is that really what we want as a surprise, or do we want to talk through that and make sure that it's a good fit? So I think there's really important questions to think about and talk when we talk to our family members and our loved ones about who's going to care for me. Number 1 is, what's that family dynamic for my kids? Do they work? Do both spouses work? Do they really have the ability to take care of me, to come home, to drive me to doctor's appointments, to the hospital for different things? And how about the children, right? At various ages. Come to my house, we're running 1,000,000 miles an hour in the evening, basketball and baseball and ninja and gymnastics. Okay, at some point, if I have to drive my dad around to doctor's appointments, do my kids miss out on some of that stuff? It's a trade-off. Physically, do we have the ability to move that person around? In a lot of cases, no. Right? That person might be 150, 200, 250 pounds. Is it a reality you can move that person around? And where do they currently live from a geography perspective? I have a sister in Maine, a brother in Colorado. I'm 4.5-hour drive from my dad. Is it realistic that I can make it home to take care of him and take him to doctor's appointments? Maybe our kids live 5 minutes away. Maybe it's more of a reality. How far away do the kids live today? And of course, we're always moving, and we're throughout the country and throughout the cities. And I think this is a really important question, is, do you prefer your children manage your care or provide your care? If I think about my situation, I'd rather go talk to Grandpa and talk to him about grandkids and stuff going on in our life. I don't want to go there to clean the house, to make meals, to take care of him. That's uncomfortable for me. I would much rather manage the care than provide the care. And so I think what we really want to do is we want to think about a personal situation. This is a story where maybe you've been involved or you've had a loved one that's needed care. What's that been like? And so maybe you can look through the eyes of the caregiver, or you can look through the eyes of the person receiving the care. And I often share my story when I talk about long-term care. My first real memory of a loved one going into a long-term care facility was one of my grandmas. My grandpa died, and my grandma ended up having to move into a long-term care facility. So again, there was spouse take care of spouse. Kid couldn't take care of parent because kids weren't living anywhere in the area. Who was the caregiver? There were not a lot of options in that small town. It ended up being a nursing home, a traditional nursing home that maybe we've all experienced. What was the impact on health? And what I think about with this question is I think about our family situation. Now, my grandma moved into a nursing home facility. She did not move in with us, my family. My mom was a trained RN. My aunt was a trained RN. My grandma didn't go live with them either. And I asked my mom why grandma didn't come live with us. And my mom said because we did not want her to disrupt our family, busy family, nor did we want to disrupt hers. Move her into a foreign territory where she didn't know her environment at all. Now, who paid for that care? Well, my grandpa was a hard-working dairy farmer. And when grandma went into the nursing home, they sold everything, and all of my grandpa's hard work went directly to the nursing home. Nothing was left over. Grandma ended up qualifying for Medicaid. And I think of this last question, how'd this impact the finances? I remember vividly my mom sending checks to my grandma at the nursing home for $20 and $30, and I said, what's this for? She said, Mike, this is so grandma can get her hair done, so she can feel normal. Isn't that crazy that many people that are in the Medicaid system don't have enough money to do those little things? But grandma was so broke that she was on the Medicaid system. Again, I want to go back to think about the kids and how they had to handle that situation. But what I also think about when I came in this business is what was it like for grandma? Right? Because if you're grandparents out there, you love your kids, but you adore your grandkids, right? It must have been hell on earth for grandma to think her grandkids' last memory of her was in a life of dependency in a nursing home that was not an awesome nursing home. That is a real challenge for those of us that are getting a little bit older. And if we can look through that lens and say, what kind of things and decisions can we make today to give us a better life, to be able to spend more time in the home assisted living facility and maybe not end up in that nursing home that we are thinking of? Because there's consequences. There's consequences to the family. There's consequences to our ability to stay in the home, our spouse to be able to stay in that home. There's consequences to our life savings, our retirement, a retirement that's left for our spouse. There's relationship risk as well. One kid is maybe very involved with the care, one kid isn't. It's very, very much a challenge when we talk about the relationship risk as well. This is a great guide. Anybody on here, feel free to chat if you want this. We don't actually have this at the very end. This is fantastic. Nationwide put together a nice little package called the Caregiver Resource Guide. If you're planning on a loved one taking care of you, if that's part of the plan, then chat this and we will get you the Nationwide Caregiving Resource Guide. Very helpful for the caregiver, very helpful for mom and dad to understand what it's like to go through that experience. Okay, so that's kind of the emotional piece of long-term care. There's a financial risk as well. And I think too often we focus on the financial side, not unimportant, but there's some real emotions that are involved in this as well. So let's price the risk. And we'll give you a chance to get a copy of this at the very end, a complimentary copy. We actually put together personalized estimates of retirement health care costs. It includes things like Medicare costs and Part D costs, and it also includes projecting out long-term care costs. It's fascinating. You can see the highlights. This particular person, this is projecting that this person's going to go in the long-term care facility at 87. I don't know where that comes from, but we send in some basic health information, and Nationwide puts together a nice little package for us. This is really important for those of us that are planning on trying to understand what that risk is. If maybe we're trying to self-insure, this is really helpful in understanding better than anything else we have how much maybe we should put aside for our future long-term care costs. And I ask this question all the time. When I sit down with people that are thinking about going in retirement or are in retirement, I say, if you had a choice of leaving your estate and your hard-earned assets to one of four entities, who would you want to leave it to? Kids or grandkids, charity, nursing home, government. I never hear number 3 and 4. I always hear number 1 and 2. And when people say 1 and 2, then I say, what's your plan? And usually people go quiet, right? What is the plan to make sure our hard-earned assets go? Because we think about it, you've saved, you've limited purchasing, you've done things to be able to accumulate your net worth, and to know that that hard-earned net worth goes to the nursing home or government. My grandpa's lifetime work of building that dairy farm, all to go to the nursing home. right? That's hard. And if we know what that outcome is, boy, maybe we'd spend more in our lifetime, give more away during our lifetime. But the unintended consequence is a lot of times that money goes to the nursing home and charity. And what are those costs? I think for many of us on this call, if this situation arises, hopefully it's 20, 30 years down the road. So I think when we do long-term care planning, sometimes I hear people say, I'm going to self-insure. And I think what people need to make sure they're thinking about is not long-term care costs today in 2022. Let's think about those costs in 2040, as this slide shows. I love Genworth's cost of care survey. It picks any metropolitan area in the United States. You can pick any spot, and it gives you an average cost, whether it's home care, assisted living, or nursing home. It's a really good way to help you understand what are those costs in those communities. So make sure you write that down, take a picture of Genworth cost of care survey. And what I think we probably all know is healthcare costs is increasing at a higher pace than core inflation. Now, we know we've recently gone through a spat of inflation, but historical inflation over the last 16 years is a touch under 2%. You can see the column on the far right side that says healthcare costs in those four areas have gone up anywhere from about 2 to 4%. So what I think is important, again, is understanding that if I don't need care for 25 years, the cost today will be about double, just with average inflation costs. I think the other thing that we have to think about is what is the duration? How much time do we spend in the long-term care continuum? Now, average is hard because half the people are less, half the people are more, but at least it's a starting point. You can see these numbers right here, that any services, right, home-assisted nursing home, averages about 3 years. Assisted living facilities, a little bit over 2 years. Just the nursing home alone is a touch over 2 years. But what I'm floored with is the 20% of people are in facilities longer than 5 years. Just imagine how debilitating that is for somebody's estate. So we think about this nursing home, right? There's all these different areas that we spend our time in the long-term care continuum. And I think this is a cute cartoon. On the bottom, it says, yet another escaped attempt from the nursing home, right? We have the gentleman outside that's running away. And then, of course, the caretakers inside that say, relax, we'll go get him after we finish a game of chess, right? We think that long-term care planning is all about the nursing home and getting out of the long-term care facility. I think long-term care keeps us out of that nursing home as long as possible. So I think that's a cute cartoon. But again, let's go back to the pricing of long-term care. So let's just say this person went through the traditional continuum, right? Spouse take care of spouse, kid take care of parent, home care. Home care for 18 months. The price tag on that is about $82,000. 24 months in assisted living facility brings a price tag of about $103,000. 18 months in a nursing home brings a price tag of about $139,000. Add all that up, that's about $325,000 for 5 years of care. $325,000. On the bottom of that, we just said, well, let's say times two. Maybe it's a married couple. Husband and wife both spend 5 years, or maybe another way of looking at that. Again, 25 years from now, that $325,000 will double. 650. Right? Two spouses could be 1.3 million. That's amazing. We think about how long it's taken us to save $650,000, $325,000, only to go to the nursing home like that. So how are you going to pay for long-term care? So many of us will pay out of pocket. We'll touch briefly on the government solutions, Medicare, Medicaid, and long-term care is obviously a solution as well. So let's real quickly run through Medicare, Medicaid. We get this question a lot. What's the difference between the two? Do either of them pay? So Medicare is really for getting hurt or sick and going to get better. We call that acute care. So what Medicare supplements in Advantage plans are designed to pay for the acute care. They're not designed to pay for nursing home or long-term care. You can see that third bullet says maybe there might be some benefits out there in a traditional nursing home situation, but again, don't count on Medicare for paying more than a couple days in a long-term care setting. Medicaid, as we spoke about earlier, again, That's the social safety net that we have as a country. You have to essentially have about nothing, right? Number 2 says your income and assets are spent down to virtually nothing. And I think the other frustrating part for people in Medicaid is they don't have a choice of where they go. And as more and more boomers get to that environment where they're going to assisted living facilities and nursing homes, you go where there's a bed available, not to the one that you want, and that's a challenge. So the difference between Medicare, acute care, Medicaid, for when you have nothing left. And if you've done nothing, then you have a plan. That plan is called self-insure. That's the default plan that you have. And that default plan of out-of-pocket is you're using your income and savings to pay for assets, and you might have to sell valued assets. Maybe you have to sell the cabin or that thing that you really like to transfer or keep. Well, you need cash to pay for the facility for your spouse. Maybe you trigger income taxes or loss of future growth on an asset. We can think about it right now with the market's down 20%. Right now we got to sell assets and lose 20% and be able to pay for our long-term care. We're adding to the problem. And that can create, and the other one is financial commitments. Maybe I'm saving money to help send my grandkid to college or other things that I want to do. Well, maybe I have to use that money for long-term care. I can deplete my retirement savings. I might say, who cares? But oh, by the way, maybe there's a spouse there that does care, that has things that they want to fund. And ultimately, it impacts how much you can pass on. And not that everybody wants to pass on everything, but again, if you had a choice to pass on kids' charity, kids, grandkids, charity, nursing home, or government, which one would you want, and what are we going to do about it? So that I'll self-insure, remember, it's a big price tag. It could be zero, but it could be that $650,000. And does it really make sense to maintain that risk? And economists agree that the right way to think about insurance is to protect against the rare but significant mishaps that could lead to financial ruin. I would argue, long-term care absolutely fits into that. And we think about our risk management strategy over a lifetime. What things do we insure? Our home? Probably not worth that amount. Our car, maybe? Not worth that amount. Our cell phones, the blender, the TV, all these things that we insure, yet this thing that can happen to 7 out of 10 of us and are substantial in cost, we choose not to. Risk management is about protecting against the rare but significant mishaps that could lead to financial ruin. At the end of the day, why not transfer some of the risk? You're still going to retain some, but why not transfer some of that risk to an insurance company? Again, think of all the areas that you've transferred risk in the past. Okay, many of us have seen this diagram. I like this because this visually helps us understand the paradigm for long-term care planning. On the right side has traditional long-term care. That's been the way that we historically have looked at it. We understand what the risk is. There's a product designed to transfer that risk. It's called long-term care insurance. On the other side is self-funded, which again, if we've done nothing, that's the default. But I want to go back to traditional long-term care, because traditional long-term care, many of us don't like the fact, and we can say this about a lot of insurance plans, we don't like paying for something we hope we never use. Paying money in all those years, tipping over dead, and none of that money going to anybody else. That gives us heartburn. So that hasn't been a lot of fun for a lot of people. So there's really been, I'll say, this innovation around the hybrid solutions. And the hybrid solutions, we're going to talk about long-term care real quickly. Again, there's a lot of us that have long-term care. I own long-term care. My wife owns long-term care. It provides tax-free benefits in the event that we need it. It does provide us peace of mind knowing that we've got something that can help us out. It can help protect some of those other assets that we have. It can help us make choices where we get that care, right? That we don't end up in the nursing home because we don't have anything, that we can stay in an assisted living facility, or we can stay in the home care and help preserve the quality. Okay, this I think is really interesting. There's a lot of numbers on here. What I want to point out is what's happening here. So this hybrid world that we're going to talk about in a moment, let's go to the bottom chart. This is standalone long-term care insurance. This is the progression. You can see it's a downward progression in long-term care insurance sales. Now, one of that might be just us as consumers not loving this. It could be there's other options, the hybrid. I think the third thing is long-term care companies are tightening the underwriting requirements. So as we said earlier, your health changes, you're healthy until you're not. Health changes, well, I think a lot of insurance companies are saying we are not going to take on some of that risk that we would have taken on years ago. What I want you then to look at are those top two graphs. They're going up, meaning people are investing more money in those other alternative long-term care solutions. Annuity solutions on the left, life insurance solutions on the right. If anybody cares, life insurance hybrids are the most popular out there in the marketplace today. So what is hybrid? What are hybrids? So hybrids combine multiple risks. So we're taking long-term care and we're attaching it to an existing financial product that typically pays out. One being an annuity product, one being a life insurance product. So again, we're able to attach those or maybe solve two risks with one product. With a hybrid, you can fund it either with a big chunk of money, we call that a single premium payment, or there might be some solutions that you can do an annual or monthly or annual contribution because you don't have a big asset sitting around. One of the huge things about the hybrid products is, in many cases, those rates are guaranteed. Traditional long-term care insurance, we've seen those insurance policies go up in price. And why wouldn't we? Everything else does, but that does give us anxiety knowing that our insurance products might go up. Oftentimes, hybrids are easier to qualify for. So maybe, again, you have some of those morbidity issues that are preventing you from qualifying for traditional long-term care. Many cases, the hybrid space is a great place to be able to move your long-term care planning. And again, number 5 is if the policy is never used, you tip over dead due to some other cause, we know that every dollar goes to the kids, grandkids, or charity. And people really like that, knowing that the dollars they're investing goes someplace else. But I think this concept I really want you to attach to today is, again, if we're thinking about self-insuring, or we've got the default, we are self-insuring right now, think about just simply adding some leverage. When I say leverage, think of that as a little risk transfer to the insurance company. With assets you're already earmarked to take care of your long-term care expenses. So again, if you're earmarked some, think about just adding some leverage, and that's really where I believe the hybrid space is awesome. Okay, so we're going to talk about those 3 in the middle hybrid solutions. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. I'm going to be kind of brief, but I want to help you understand there's some great strategies out there. So in the annuity space, here's an example of somebody who has $100,000. They were planning on keeping that for their care anyway. So instead of doing that, what they're doing is they're adding another $200,000 of long-term care on the back of that annuity. So you can see the column says total long-term care benefit $300,000. That benefit's paid out at $4,167 per month. So that client has $100,000, and you can see year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 we have there. If they tip over dead in year 5, never needing long-term care, well, $100,000 goes on to a named beneficiary. But if they actually needed long-term care, now they can go into the insurance pockets after they've used their $100,000 anyway, which they're planning on doing, to get an extra $200,000 to help them stay in the home or go to a great assisted living facility. So this is a great example of how annuities are innovating to be able to provide some long-term care benefits. Here's another strategy, and in the red, I put in there good for near uninsurables or flat out uninsurables. There's a lot of people probably on this call. When we did our last long-term call, a lot of people who were uninsurable said, is there anything out there? And this was actually a strategy we brought to a lot of people. And there's a lot of stuff on here, so I'll try to point out. On the left side has a chart. And what the chart is basically saying is if you hold this investment product for over 6 years, this is an annuity product, then you're going to get a 25 or 125% of the accumulation value for long-term care purposes. So let's go to an actual example in the yellow box. So this person invested money in this particular investment. 10 years down the road, the investment was now worth that $200,000 invested was now worth $290,000 as far as an investment. So if they tipped over dead, $290,000 would go to the named beneficiary. But now let's say they need long-term care. So we're going to add that 125% or 25% on top. So instead of $290,000 is the actual value, they have $362,000 of money to use towards long-term care benefits. This strategy pays out $72,000 every year for 5 years. Is it perfect? No, but that's an awfully good strategy for somebody who's already got some morbidity issues, that has some assets that they've put aside to take care of their care, to be able to get a little additional leverage from the insurance company as well. So these are a couple examples of how the annuities are innovating to provide some long-term care solutions. So some of the benefits, again, they have access to long-term care immediately. You put the money in and it's approved, you can turn on that benefit right away. Any money that's not used can be transferred to a named beneficiary. And again, a huge benefit is those long-term care costs cannot increase inside that product. Some of the cons, well, if you needed a big chunk of money, we saw that this is paying out at $4,100 a month. Well, if you needed 10 grand, it's not necessarily awesome for that. And as we want to make sure we reinforce is the hybrids typically are a way to protect a portion of the risk. They're not awesome at protecting all of the risk like long-term care insurance potentially could. Okay, so that's the annuity solution. The next solution we're going to touch on is life insurance with ABRs. ABR stands for Accelerated Benefit Riders. So there's a lot of words here. What I want to point out here is the chronic illness rider is a bit more restrictive. And by that, I'll show you an example. You don't really know exactly how much you're going to get. You're going to get something most likely. It's hard to know exactly how much you're going to get. But why people love this chronic care is the second highlighted bullet point says the chronic care illness benefits are lower, because what happens in a chronic care is you don't actually pay for any long-term care insurance until you use it. And that's what consumers say, listen, I don't want to pay for it until I use it. Chronic care is actually the optimal strategy. If you never use it, you never pay for it. Chronic care is a great strategy for that. Here's an example of how that works. If you can see the highlights in the middle, it has a mild impairment, a moderate impairment, and a severe impairment. And the numbers are different on how much you're going to get. So again, I don't know what kind of thing I'm going to be experiencing, if it's mild, moderate, or severe, so I don't know exactly how much long-term care benefits I'm going to get. I'm going to get something, which is why you do this. I just don't know how much. The other thing, if I could point this out, that if you have a term insurance policy out there today that might be expiring, you can look at converting that term insurance policy to a permanent policy. Even if your health has changed, there's typically an insurability option on there or conversion privilege, and sometimes those policies that you convert to automatically have a chronic care feature, so you don't have to go through any underwriting. So that can be a nice solution. It's not optimal. It's probably my least favorite of the three, but it's certainly a way to find some leverage if you need it. Life insurance, long-term care riders, or combinations. This is, as I said, this is where more of the dollars are going for long-term care. It's not necessarily good or bad. But here's two different solutions. This is actually an example of somebody contributing on a monthly basis, or I guess this shows an annual premium of $5,000 a year. This is actually on a husband and wife. And they're paying that amount in together. And there's a life insurance number. That face amount is $115,000. So it means when they tip over dead, there's $115,000, assuming they've never used their long-term care, that goes to their kids, income tax free. But why they bought this is for the long-term care benefit. They each have $230,000, double the death benefit for long-term care benefits. So this is a great strategy, especially in a joint life situation, in the one place that there's still lifetime benefits available in the marketplace. Okay, the other solution that we really like is a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. And this example shows in the white box somebody who's got a $400,000 death benefit life insurance policy. The two yellow highlights are the important things to note. Number one is the accelerated benefit percent. How much of that death benefit can they use for long-term care purposes? This example shows 100%. So they would be able to accelerate up to $400,000 for long-term care purposes. The next important number is at what rate, the monthly accelerated percentage. Normally it's 2% or 4% of the death benefit. So in this example, $16,000 per month would be paid out for long-term care. That's not too bad. This is a really good strategy. Now where this lacks is for somebody who's relatively young. This $400,000 does not grow. So this might be a good number today, but in 25 years from now, this $400,000 is still $400,000. But again, it's a great strategy because if you never use the long-term care, you tip over dead, $400,000 is going to go income tax free to the next generation. Okay, so again, hybrids, if we can summarize, it's a great way to protect multiple risks, in a life insurance risk and a long-term care risk, an investment risk, i.e. an annuity product, and long-term care. Number two is someone will receive some benefits. You'll either get the long-term care in your lifetime or somebody will receive the annuity or life insurance benefits when you pass away. Slightly easier to qualify from a health perspective. So again, if you've got some health issues, there are solutions available in the hybrid space. And this is a way to transfer some risk. Remember, long-term care is the best way to transfer more of the risk, but transferring some risk is better than transferring no risk. Okay, so where are we at? We got to think, plan, and do something about it. Hopefully today inspired you. Remember we said 36% of the people are thinking about talking to a financial professional. Again, hopefully that's 2022 or 2023. Hopefully we've encouraged you to go out and have that conversation with somebody today. Remember, this is great education, great information, but if you do nothing with it, it is a bit of a waste of time because we ultimately, what do we want is we want more choices in those retirement years because we don't want this to happen. And I think this is a cute cartoon. At the bottom it says, I'm getting the hang of this wake up every morning and do basically the same thing with different complaints until I die. We don't want those last years to be in a facility we don't want to be in. We want to be able to stay in the facilities we want to stay in, home cares, assisted living facilities, and it takes resources to be able to do that. As we said earlier, as a gift for attending our workshop, we are happy to put together a complimentary personalized estimate of your retirement health care costs. It helps in thinking about when you might need long-term care, the costs of long-term care, but more importantly, globally, how much should you plan for putting away for your health care costs, not just long-term care. So we're happy to do this for you as well. So as Brittany said at the very beginning, this is the last of our summer series. It's been a blast talking about Social Security, taxes in retirement, Roth conversions, Power of Zero, and of course long-term care planning today. So we've got all recordings on these. So if anybody wants any of these recordings, we're happy to bring those to you. So how can we help coming out of here? We can do a few things. We are here to answer questions, be able to give you some ideas. So we're happy to do a long-term care consult so you can look at some different options that are out in the marketplace. We're happy to do the complimentary personalized estimate of retirement healthcare costs as a gift for attending today. And like we said earlier, if you've missed one of those workshops, we're happy to provide you the recording to any or all of those workshops. So if any of that's interesting to you, you can go ahead and chat. You can put in there a consult if you want to have a conversation. You can put the guide if you want the personalized estimate. You can put the recordings, the name of the recording you might want. Anything else that you want to chat is fine. We'll pick that chat up. Or if you prefer not to chat, then feel free to just send me an email direct at Mike Becker at ffig.com. I'm just going to leave this up here for about 10 seconds so you can take a picture of this or write down how we can potentially help. Okay, so in closing, I want to compliment everybody for taking the time to join us today. I believe that when it comes to finances, a lot of people put their head in the sand. They say, I can learn about this another day. I can do something about this another day. But you took time out of your busy day to learn about a very important topic and some strategies for dealing with that. So I want to compliment you for doing that. I also want to thank Alexander and Haberman, the crew, for the opportunity to be here to share over the summer series with you. And we are planning on 2023, so hopefully we'll be back with a lot of great content for next year as well. So we're going to flip it over here to some Q&A. So I want to thank everybody again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mike, for putting on this presentation today. We will get to the Q&A very shortly, but for those of you who need to get going, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending Alexander and Haberman's summer-ish speaker series and today's presentation, Long-Term Care Planning. Our thanks go out to Mike Becker with Legacy Financial Partners, to our staff, including Joshua, Caleb, Christian, Zena, Jackie, Nicole, and Beth, as well as Aaron and Todd, who are running our technology today. To request a recording of any of our previous workshops or this workshop, please email workshops@mnhealthagents.com. And as a reminder, Alexander and Haberman is a specialty firm focused on assisting with Medicare Advantage, supplements, and Part D plans, as well as individual and family health insurance on and off exchange, and group benefits including health, dental, vision, and disability. Thank you again so much. For those of you who are able to stick around, we do have Q&A. We had a couple questions come in already, so we'll get started with those. But if you have additional ones now or as it gets going, please feel free to add them and just send them to hosts and presenters, and we will get to them as we are able. So first of all, thank you again.
My pleasure.
We're so happy to have you back again. One of the questions that came across is, can I use my health savings account to pay for long-term care? And also, what about hybrids?
Sure, great question. And I think every time we come on and we do a workshop, we always talk about how valuable the health savings account is, right, Brittany? And this is another example is, yes, you can actually use your HSA account to pay for long-term care, standalone long-term care policies, Brittany. Now, the hybrids, no, but the standalone long-term care, you absolutely can. So that's a huge advantage. Again, health savings accounts are wonderful, wonderful tools, and hopefully they're talking to you guys about adding that to their plans.
Absolutely. So another question is, a professional told me I can self-insure long-term care risk. How do I know if I can? Do you have any rules of thumb?
Yeah, that's all. I hear that a lot, and I think when we talk about sort of those objections or reasons why people, that's one that people bring up, and I think the first response that comes to my mind is, why would you? There's a lot of things that we can absorb the risk on, right? I mean, does that same person say drop your car insurance? Does that same person say you don't really need home insurance? Probably not, right? So maybe you have the resources to do it, but for pennies on the dollar, and especially now with these hybrid solutions that we talked about, why would you? I think there's such a, when 70% of people use it and at the cost and the drain that's out there, I mean, I want to make sure that my hard-earned assets go to somebody other than the nursing home and government. And so I'm willing to pay that. I own long-term care insurance. I own hybrids as well because I get it and I understand it. So I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to do it. And again, it's so hard to price that, to understand what that risk is and what's the problem you're leaving behind, right?
Sure, sure.
It's a good question though. I hear it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Our questions appear to have disappeared for a moment. So I have a question that I think a lot of people are probably wondering. What is a good age to look at getting long-term care insurance?
That's always a tricky one. And I, usually answer that by saying, well, I bought my first long-term care policy when I was 39 years old. So I bought it for a lot of reasons. Mathematically, I understood why I did that. But and you're the same way, Brittany, as we see so many people that are battling so many health issues. And as I said in the presentation, you're healthy until you're not. And stuff like this, you can only buy it with your health, so do it when you can. The hard part is when you're 39, I'm saving for kids' college, I'm saving for retirement. So you get to this point, you're like, where do the resources come from? But I think that's where these hybrid like life insurance policies make a ton of sense for people, is maybe you need life insurance anyway, and maybe you put a few extra pennies in and you get a little extra long-term care. So if you tip over dead during those years where the little ones are around, you got the life insurance, and hopefully that doesn't happen, then it flips over into a long-term care policy. So that's where, again, I think the hybrids make a ton of sense, is that you can cobble together a couple risks.
Excellent. Well, our questions came back, so.
Fantastic.
This goes right along with what you were just saying. It sounds like hybrids are a good way to go. Do you have a preference?
No, I mean, that's hard. All fact patterns are different. I really do like the life insurance strategies that are out there, because if you attended any of our tax workshops over the last few months, I tell people a lot, don't give your kids any money. Give them life insurance, because it's such a wonderful wealth transfer tool. It goes tax-free. And so I just think it's such a wonderful tool that I can think about, if I own a big life insurance policy, this is what's going to go to the kids. Well, unless dad needs long-term care. Right? But I think it's a wonderful, wonderful tool that I get leverage if I tip over dead. It's income tax-free to the kids. It's one of my favorites. Now, that said, there's some people that are out there that are uninsurable and can't get life insurance, where the annuities, and they've got pockets of money sitting there, where an annuity solution is fine. It's maybe not as awesome, but it's fine.
Sure.
The annuity solution, one I actually shared, is one I just did with I did another one of those with my dad recently. Couldn't qualify for traditional long-term care insurance. He's 79, but he had a pocket of money that was sitting there basically for his healthcare costs. I'm like, let's leverage this up. Made a ton of sense.
Nice. So someone asked, if they have a term policy, can they convert it?
Sometimes. Oftentimes. It depends on the company. So you want to look inside the policy. Usually what you're looking for is a conversion privilege. A lot of the big company names, I don't know if I should name, but like a Northwestern or Mutual of Omaha, Transamerica, Securian, those kind of companies, most of the time they build in a conversion privilege. But those conversion privileges, let me back up. What a conversion privilege means is you took out a life insurance policy, Brittany, and your health changes. The conversion privilege basically says you can take that policy you got at preferred rates when you were 25, and you can convert it to a permanent policy also at preferred rates. No health questions asked. That's huge. That's huge.
Absolutely.
So that conversion privilege is huge. And so that's a really good strategy if I'm thinking about taking a term policy and doing something with either the chronic benefits or a long-term care strategy, that maybe you can do a conversion, and then you've got something already built in. Now, this is a little confusing, because a lot of times when you convert a policy, you might get the chronic care features. We talked a little bit about the long-term care rider, right? That 2% or 4%. That's one that you typically have to have fully underwritten again.
Okay.
So that piece of the puzzle most of the time isn't going to be automatically attached. It's going to be, you're going to have to go through some health questions to get that added on. But that's certainly, for somebody who's got some health issues, has a term policy, I would not drop it until I looked at the options. It's a great question.
Well, it looks like the next question I kind of got to without realizing it, because it says, I'm 50 years old. What age should I start planning for long-term care?
50.
For that
49.
Yeah. So someone else says that they've had a long-term care policy for 21 years, since age 50. And premiums have risen, benefits have declined. Sorry, having trouble reading it. Basically, they feel like had they invested the funds instead, would it have been better off?
Probably not. But I too have owned a long-term care policy for over 10 years. My premiums have also gone up. I don't like it. But the alternative of buying a new policy, you're still, it just means you got a really, really good deal 21 years ago.
Sure.
Today, if you buy it today, that same policy, it would be, I'm making up a number, 5 times more expensive. So yeah, it sucks. It feels terrible that it's going up. But I mean, think about every other health insurance policy you have. Every year it goes up, right? So yeah, maybe we as an industry didn't think long-term care was going to go up, although we always said it could.
To be fair,
It makes sense.
Oh, I'm sorry, I totally cut you off. I was going to say, to be fair, Part B is actually going down next year.
Yay.
By around $5, but still, per month.
But if you own it, it might not feel good, keep it. I think that's when people always ask me, they're like, should I drop it? Keep it, because it still is a really good deal. Could you have invested that money? That's always the objection. People often say that yeah, if I put it elsewhere, most of us wouldn't have. Or the other side of that is, you're lucky for 21 years. What if something happened to you year 6? Mm-hmm. Right, the insurance benefit would have been massive.
Okay.
So it doesn't feel good, but I compliment you for doing it 21 years ago. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. So the next question is kind of getting more at the specifics to some degree. A lot of health insurance policies will have coverage for, say, preventive care. And so it's, maybe there's a limit, maybe there's not. But in this case, long-term care, and they're asking about clarification, it's more of a pool of money versus specifically for the nurses or specifically for the housing or whatnot.
Good. I think that's a really good question. So they're part of maybe that question too. I often in these calls get questions about, okay, my grandma or my parents had a long-term care policy and only paid fill in the blank. Since I believe it was 1996, there was basically a change in how long-term care was regulated. And I can't say it was all the same, but there was a lot more standardization for long-term care policies. And so the standardization for long-term care policies is it really turned into, as long as you qualify for 2 of 6 activities of daily living, you are going to get a benefit, Brittany. And that benefit is based on what's stated in the policy. So if I have a long-term care policy that pays me $5,000 a month, I'm going to get whatever reimbursed up to $5,000. So if I get a bill from you at the nursing home that's for $4,000, my long-term care is going to pay me $4,000, Brittany, and I will pay the long-term care facility. That extra $1,000, by the way, will just stay in that pool that you talked about. So that
Sure.
pool, if it's a $300,000 pool and I'm taking $4,000 out, well, that pool might last a little bit longer. But it's designed to give you a fixed amount of money to reimburse you for long-term care costs. And those long-term care costs typically are going to be the facility and the home care, the nursing home, those type of things.
Perfect. And so you actually got to the last question. It was what triggers the long-term care spending, which sounds like it's those 2 activities of daily living.
Or severe cognitive impairment. I didn't really talk about this, but the 2 of 6, just like you talked about, substantial assistance, so the doctors are basically signing off, or a severe cognitive impairment. So that's always a trigger in traditional long-term care as well.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you who attended. If you do have additional questions and or want the recording, please let us know either by emailing Mike or emailing workshops@mnhealthagents.com. Mike is Mike Becker at ffig.com. And thank you again. It's so great to have you. It's so great to be here. And we look forward to kicking off seminars again in 2023 with you on board.
Thanks, Brittany. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you.